phone because I'm looking at the clock, not seeing who's on Facebook. Forgot my watch today. So today we're going to have a beautiful lesson from the Gospel of Matthew on the Mount of Transfiguration. Hear this word from God. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and his brother John, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud a voice said, "This is my Son, the Beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them, "Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." I heard this the other day, and it's going to make some of you probably cringe a tad, but a survey went out and asked Americans, does the earth revolve around the sun or the sun around the earth? 42% of Americans think the sun revolves around the earth. Sad. How can it be that at this day and age that we can still be ignorant about such things? And not only that, we're just beginning to start to harness the sun, starting to understand its power and its might. Without the sun, we could not exist. I remember when I was in one of my science classes in college, the professor was saying, okay, here's the earth, and here's the sun. When we're closest to the sun, it's 91 million miles away. When we're farthest away from the sun, it's 93 million. And if we were a little closer, a little less, we couldn't exist. And he would say, and I guess that was all by accident. The reality is that we, every day, experience this incredible energy from this star, which is the lifeblood of us all. Without it, we cannot exist. And some of us remain ignorant about it. Now, sometimes our ignorance is because we just don't know yet. No one has taught us. Other times, it's because we didn't listen, especially when it came time to take the test or be ready for the survey when it appeared. Sometimes it's a willful ignorance. Did you know that there is a satellite now that's going to be launched called LightSail, S-A-I-L? The reason I have to spell that for you is because of my southern accent. I'm going to a sail, I'm going to sell it, and I'm going to sail a boat. They all sound the same, even though they're spelled differently. So it's LightSail 1, and it will be powered by nothing but the sun. It's going to be pushed by photons. And what's amazing about this is photons never run out of energy. It will have energy to infinity. And it will be able to reach a speed 1/10 of light speed, which is about 67 million miles per hour. That's pretty quick, isn't it? All powered by the sun. It's an amazing thing, that sun shining up there in that sky. It's an amazing thing. And we can appreciate it more when we spend time to do what? Learn more about it and experience it. Sometimes we have a willful ignorance. That means in spite of all the data, all the scientific facts, we still choose to believe something else. Recently, Bill Nye the Science Guy had a debate with a Dr. Ham. I don't know where the DR came from, but a Dr. Ham at Liberty University, where he was going to debate the scientific view of evolution versus creationism. In other words, the earth is 6,000 years old. And finally, I heard something good come out of Pat Robertson's mouth, something that actually sounded intelligent. And he said, we got to stop pounding this 6,000-year-old Earth idea because it's really making us look stupid. I'm thinking, Sometimes we disregard the facts, we disregard the data because it doesn't match our particular ideology. But it doesn't change the facts. I can want to believe the earth is 6,000 years old all I want to. I can even believe that I am the center of the universe, and don't ask Amy, and believe that the sun and the solar system all revolve around me. I can want to believe that all I want to, but regardless of the fact, it's not true. So what is it that is true? Do we have any idea the power of the sun? The power of the Son of God as well. You see, that's what this story is all about. For Jesus took 3 of his disciples up on a mountaintop, and scholars believe this is the same mountaintop that he went up on when he was tempted to rule all the kingdoms of the world. Isn't it ironic that he was tempted to do that at the beginning of his ministry, and now he's coming to the end of his ministry, and he has this experience with these 3 disciples where Jesus was transformed. The Greek word that we translate transformed from is metaphoro, metamorphosis. And it wasn't that Jesus was reflecting a bright light that was coming on him. He in and of himself had this light and this energy. So his face was shining like a star, and his clothes dazzled. And there with him was the energy of Moses and Elijah. Moses, the one who was the giver of the law, who liberated Israel from Egypt. Elijah, that great powerful prophet that legend has it that he never did die but rode up into heaven in that big chariot in the sky. And Elijah's the one who is to return whenever the Messianic age is to begin, you see. And Jesus and Moses and Elijah are all having a conversation with each other, all bright, shining lights. Now, what in the world do we do with that? It wasn't that Moses and Elijah were sleeping quietly in their graves and Jesus woke them up and said, hey, we need a conference up on the mountaintop over here. What this passage of Scripture tells us is the same thing that science tells us. What? The Bible and science can be saying the same thing? Is that who we really are, as a spirit and a soul is energy. You cannot kill energy. It's like the photons that drive the satellite. It never goes away. And we have this incredible energy. Have any of you been getting a massage? And as the masseuse is working along your spine, you feel little pops of electricity between your back and their hands? Have you ever had that experience? Okay, I have. Some people can see auras. You know in the old paintings how everybody has a halo? Many people believe that they weren't just painting something to say, oh, well, this is a holy person, but this person has a certain aura about them. Everybody here has seen an aura at one time or another. When a woman is getting married and she's walking down the aisle, it doesn't matter what she looks like in real life. At that moment in time, she what? Glows. We are energy. Lots of energy. You want to know why little children and babies cannot sit still even during Pastor Barton's sermons? Because you have this cosmos full of energy in this tiny little body, and it's just way too much for this body to contain. See? We are energy. And what the disciples were experiencing that moment in time is Jesus' energy, Moses' energy, and Elijah's energy, all just burning that internal fire and force, burning at one time, and it's an energy that we all have within us. You may not know it. You may be ignorant of it. You may even will yourself not to believe that it could be true, but it doesn't change the reality. Who you are as a soul occupying this body, connected to this body, is an eternal force of light and energy. Martin Scorsese did a beautiful documentary on George Harrison, the Beatle. And of all the Beatles who went to India to get spiritual enlightenment, to see if there was an alternative to the LSD and the other drugs that they were taking, it really stuck with George. And when George knew that he was going to die, he spent hours and hours and hours meditating, preparing himself for the transition. And his widow shares that she was in the room with him when he breathed his last breath, and it was dark outside. It was the wee hours of the morning. And she says, and there was a glow in the room, and no one turned on a light. Recently, last fall, I shared with some of you, you may remember, I did a very deep hypnotic meditation. It lasted for about 6 hours. And at one point of that meditation, I was able to see and experience that energy that keeps up inside of me. And the thing that I was so overwhelmed by was how powerful it is. So when the disciples experienced this incredible power of light and energy from Jesus and from Moses and Elijah, they responded in different ways. First thing Peter wanted to do was what? Let's get busy. Let's build something. I don't know what to do with this, but I'm thinking if I build something, I'll be able to maintain it and manage it. Let's build booths or houses, one for Jesus, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. That's what Peter wanted to do. Let's just get busy. You know, it's like that bumper sticker theology. Jesus is coming, look busy, right? And just about time Peter was to organize the work crew, a cloud covered them, and a cloud is a theophany. It's in a way in the Bible that God comes physically present among those whom God is wanting to communicate to. God led the children of Israel through the wilderness in a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, a theophany. So a cloud covers them, and a voice from the cloud says, "This is Jesus, my son, my beloved. Listen to him." And at this moment in time, one of those rare moments in time when a human being has their eyes open and everything is clicking and their energy and God's energy and everybody's energy is all clicking at one time, and they experience the very presence of the divine. And whenever you experience the very presence of the divine, what do? You fall to the ground in a fetal position because you're scared out of your wits. That's what they did. And yet, again, in the Bible, Jesus had to come to the disciples and say, don't be afraid. Stand up. Now, Peter wanted to make booths and memorials there on the mountain to commemorate this event. But God nor Jesus had time for that. Because you see, it wasn't about the miraculous epiphany on the mountaintop. It's about how that power and that energy was going to help them to face the challenges that were coming their way. Because their work was where? Down in the valley. So, brothers and sisters, this energy that we have within us is a facet of God. If you believe that God created us in God's image, we are all a piece of God's personality. It's in us. And whether you want to believe it or not, it doesn't change the reality that you are energy. Whether you want to woo yourself not to believe it or not, doesn't change the reality that the sun is still shining. And God gives us this energy, not so that we can build memorials and just hang around and talk about how wonderful that experience was, but rather to empower us to do God's work in the world, so that we may represent the Son and share with everyone around us, as we experience it within ourselves, the incredible reality of life and its power. Yeah, you're powerful beyond belief, beyond belief. And what keeps you from seeing your power? Ignorance. What keeps you from experiencing your power? What? Fear. But the instructions to the disciples are the same to you and me today. This is Jesus. Listen to him. And he speaks to you through the Gospels. He speaks to you through your prayers. He speaks to you in your private thoughts when you're driving and you're walking or you're alone. He speaks to you constantly, nudging you, guiding you, nurturing you, and rarely and occasionally one of those wonderful epiphany experiences. If we're going to be Christian, which for me means following Jesus, then we need to know what he said. We need to know what he did. We need to know what it is he would have us do. Love your neighbor as you love yourself, and love God. That's pretty much it as far as Jesus' commandments go. But the way that you find that out is doing what? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. But Pastor Barton, I read those things and I don't have a clue what they said. You know what? I remember the first time I read algebra, I didn't have a clue what it said either until somebody did what? Taught me. If you don't have a clue, you can't figure out, what do you need to do? Go to Bible study. Ask. Get a book. Get a reference. Talk to somebody else who does seem to be connected. Ask. Back in the olden days, before phones and apps, and I didn't know how to spell a word, what'd your mama tell you? Go look it up. Oh. If you don't know, what? Ask. If you don't understand, what? Look into it, look it up, experience it. Take the time to listen, to hear, so that you can know experientially this incredible power force within you that we call God, that is the Son of God. Thus ends the lesson. Let us pray.